September is a crazy time of year in Southeast Texas for orchids. Stay tuned as we talk about all of the things going on in preparation for winter, coming up at the Orchid Hut. Welcome back to the Orchid Hut. My name is Dana, and I'm really hoping in advance that today's video is not going to be too jumbled up. But that's really how I feel about my entire orchid collection at this time of year. You know, the weather is changing outside, and preparations need to be made, in my case, for bringing all of the orchids indoors eventually, and doing it in, you know, a safe way. So today what I wanted to do was give you a little bit of an idea about what's going on outside and what I am doing to slowly kind of prepare my indoor area for accepting 110 plus orchids coming in for at least 3 months of the winter. Now, what you have in front of the camera right now are the first 4 outdoor orchids that I have brought in. It's the Wilsonara. That one was beginning to get a little bit of heat stress earlier, so I brought that one in. There's 2 Cattleyas that have recently been repotted. This one is doing really well, getting some new root growth down here. And then the other orchid is an oncidium. So there's definitely a mix here, but they're all tall plants, and they are, you know, at least a good 6 inches beneath the lights. Now, I want to insert a clip here to show you that outdoors, the shelf at the Orchid Hut is beginning to get a little bit sparse. You know, as the sun drops lower in the sky, I was having to be really careful about putting the shade cloth up. There was part of the shelf that really wasn't even all that usable anymore because it was just too intense right there with the sun. So I've been doing a lot of shifting around. The stuff that's on the orchids that are on the shaded little bench are still fine, and then there's a few that are beginning to miss being on the shelf in my more sunny area. So it's changing how it looks outdoors as I'm shuffling things around. And these 4 were 4 that were the first to come in. Now, they had all been recently potted, but you can tell here that they're on a shelf unto themselves as I'm kind of watching, making sure there's not any kind of critters that are going to hatch out, or, you know, that they have any kind of problem. I did give them a bit of a leaf trim and inspected them really well. They all got a spray with hydrogen peroxide and then waited a few days, and they all had a spray with neem oil before coming indoors. So that was how I prepped these to come inside. There were no visible ants or bugs or anything in the pot, so that was okay for these orchids, but might not be for ones that I bring in a little bit later. Okay, so now what I'm having to do inside is make sure that my shelving is all adjusted to accommodate different heights of plants. I am going to have to make sure that all of my lights are connected together and working. And then over here, there is a hanging rack that I'm going to need to extend in front of the window. And I need to make sure that I have drip trays for all of the plants that I'm bringing in. So there's quite a number of things to think about as as you kind of prepare to bring more and more plants in. And the last thing you want to do is bring them all in and then realize that your lights aren't how they need to be, or you don't have your shelving correct, because then you're trying to make furniture and structural adjustments around a whole bunch of plants already being inside. So that's really what you're trying to avoid. Now, I am going to take a little break right here because I want to show you another area inside the house and how I'm using that area to assist me in bringing all of these other plants in. Okay, be right back. Okay, so if having to deal with all of these orchids wasn't enough, we decided simultaneously in September to paint a spare bedroom. All right, so you'll probably hear that my voice is echoing a bit in here because there's only 2 pieces of furniture and there really isn't anything in here to help with the acoustics. But the main thing that I wanted to show you orchid-wise was the shelf that is against the wall. And yes, we have actually been painting a room around a shelf of orchids. So these are mostly the Phalaenopsis orchids that are starting to spike. And I have 5 of them that have already started to spike, which is completely out of the norm. Usually I don't begin to get spikes until November. So I'm trying to light train the spikes so that they grow straight and tall first, and then I will train them to arch in the direction that I want them to grow so that they take up as little space as possible. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with just letting your spikes grow free form, but I don't really have room for that. So, and I think I kind of prefer the traditional arched Phalaenopsis spike anyway. Okay, so that's what's happening here. Now, one of these, I call them spider lights. I don't know what they're really called, but they have 4 or 5 different bendable light tubes that you can adjust in a variety of different ways. And that's how I'm sort of using that to help train the bloom spikes, and there's one right there on my large Phalaenopsis. So this area is now, able to accommodate a good number of orchids, and it freed up the shelf in the other room that I showed you at the beginning of the video so that I could bring in outdoor orchids and have them a little bit separate from the other plants for a while. So, as I begin to work these Phalaenopsis orchids back into their regular growing places, then it will free up this shelf so that I can have a bit of an isolated area to bring more outdoor orchids in and kind of monitor them for 7 days, 10 days, make sure they don't have any insects or problems before I incorporate them into the rest of the plants. Okay, so this is truly like musical chairs with orchids, and I would really recommend one of these spider lights, as I call them. Just make certain that it's full spectrum and has bright enough light to be really useful. I have one of these that's really good. I have another one that's not so great. Neither one has a name on it anymore, so I can't tell you which is which, but just, be careful, I guess, with buying and sort of compare before you purchase. Okay, so take another little break here and we'll be right back. Okay, so what was really the main point of this video? The main point is to plan now in September for what you will probably have to be forced to do either at the end of October or the beginning of November, and try to do as much upfront work as you can so that it doesn't all hit you at once and then you're sort of scrambling and falling all over yourself trying to get things arranged and bring plants in because the nighttime temps are too cold. So let's kind of just recap here. Make sure you have your lighting, your shelves, places to hang the plants that are going to need to hang throughout the winter in either baskets or pots, and make sure that they have drip trays if that's necessary, and be sure that you have shelves adjusted to accommodate all the various different heights of your plants. And then I think the other thing, you know, if you don't have the complication with the Phalaenopsis spiking like I do right now, you probably do need to have a place where you can set a group of outdoor plants inside for 7 to 10 days and just monitor that there aren't any issues going on. And before you bring those in, you may want to trim the leaves, inspect them really well for insects, spray them with peroxide if you see any kind of problem that might help, and or neem oil, just to be on the safe side to eradicate any problems that you might have. So now is the time to do this, because there was one year where I was caught and I really had to deal with, you know, 80-something orchids all in the matter of an afternoon because I didn't exactly have myself prepared, and that was really no fun at all. Now, the other thing that's going on outside right now is that we are beginning to finally get some rains. Temperatures are cooling a bit, so also be very mindful of water collecting in the crowns of your plants and in the leaf joints, because that can start rot in those places, stem rot, and you know, you want to avoid that as well. So, you know, while the orchids love the rain, they don't like staying wet forever. So careful with that. I do have some Phalaenopsis type dendrobiums in full spike. I have brought those inside to the orchid hut because I'm afraid that some of the thunderstorms we're getting would probably damage those relatively mature spikes at this point. So lots and lots of things going on in the month of September. It feels like a horrible puzzle that may never come together, but it will. It just takes, you know, if you work at it a little bit every day, it won't be so overwhelming when it really has to be addressed. All right, if you enjoyed this video or learned something new, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe button coming up in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And click that notifications bell to let you know when I've posted something new. Thank you all so much for watching, and talk to you next time.